Local broadcast of the Nightly Business Report on Channel 7 is brought to you in part by Kahn Honda Superstore, located near Regency Square, dedicated to providing quality automobiles and award-winning sales and service, offering service Monday through Saturday and sales assistance 7 days a week. Kahn Honda Superstore, dedicated to performance, not promises.
Saxelby, dedicated to quality performance in architecture, space planning, and interior design throughout the Southeast. Saxelby.
First Union, for investment services including mutual funds, asset management, trust services, and brokerage services. First Union.
Good evening. I'm Paul Kangas. There's more evidence of an improving economy, this time from the home building industry, as housing starts hit their highest level in 4 years during November.
And I'm Scott Gervey, sitting in for Cassie Cipher tonight. Video games are the hot buys this holiday season, but shoppers now have fewer stores to buy one of the most popular and controversial games.
NBR is made possible by Digital, an information technology company putting imagination to work. Franklin Funds and Templeton Worldwide form the $97 billion Franklin Templeton Group, a global alliance of mutual funds distributed by investment professionals to over 3 million shareholders. A.G. Edwards, member of the New York Stock Exchange, serving the investment needs of individuals and businesses through more than 400 offices nationwide. And is produced in association with Reuters, the world's largest electronic publisher, which provides NBR with news, market data, and communication services worldwide.
New home building rose for the 4th straight month in November, thanks to cheaper credit and a pickup in the economy. The Commerce Department says housing starts climbed 3.9% last month, following a revised 0.5% increase in October. Permit applications also rose strongly, indicating construction activity will continue at a healthy pace. Diane Estabrook has more.
The leap in November housing starts brought trading to a near standstill in the lumber pit at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. January lumber contracts hit a $15 trading ceiling just minutes after trading started this morning.
And I think we will see prices continue higher. I think there's a very good chance we will see new all-time highs on lumber prices. We're not that far away from it right now.
I think housing starts will be firm for the next couple of months. Going into the early spring, maybe the market will cool down a little bit.
The National Association of Home Builders compared the impressive November figure with the building boom of the 1980s. The Northeast and South led the way with significant increases in home construction, while the West and Midwest saw declines. Construction of single-family homes was up for the second month in a row, while construction of apartments was down again. The nearly 4-year high for housing starts came after a slight increase in interest rates. Economists say the increase may have been what helped the housing market.
It's interesting that rise in rates probably caused a lot of people to go out and buy homes or new homes or existing homes, because all of a sudden they realize now rates aren't going to keep going down as they had been. So I think that upward lift in rates was a kind of a spur to the housing market.
Housing starts are expected to yo-yo up and down next year, so they probably won't feed the economy as they did this year. But economists say what is likely to continue economic growth next year are existing home sales. Diane Estabrook, NBR, Chicago.
Encouraged by yesterday's rebound in the NASDAQ market, coupled with a 9.25 point closing gain in the Dow Industrial Average, buyers took the upper hand on Wall Street this morning. With news of a solid increase in November housing starts boosting investor confidence in the economic recovery, the Dow pushed steadily higher throughout the morning and posted an 18 1/3 point gain at noon, as advancing stocks held a solid 11-7 lead over losers. Firming bond prices and heavy buying linked to expiring December stock indexes and options set off a nice afternoon rally spearheaded by IBM. At the final bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 25.43 at 3751.57, and for the week overall, the Dow was up 10.90 points. We closed right at the best level today, and that was up 28.25 points from the low of the session. Quite impressive as well. Look at that volume, 358.4 million shares. Of course, a lot of it related to the expiring December options, the triple witching as we call it. Up volume exceeded down volume by better than 2.5 times. The Dow Transport Index up 3.65. Utilities had a good gain of 1.59. And the closing tick a decidedly bullish plus 785. Standard & Poor's 500 gained just over 3 points for the second day running. The 100 hit a record high with that gain of 1.66. Mid-cap 400 was up 1.52, and the Commodity Research Bureau Index rose 0.86. New York Stock Exchange Index up 1.64. The Value 9 up about 2 2/3 points, and the Wilshire 5000 gained about 25 2/3 points. As far as the bond market was concerned, the strong jump in November new housing starts was overshadowed today by word from some Federal Reserve Board members and Treasury Secretary Benson that there was no reason to vote for tightening monetary policy at next week's meeting of the Open Market Committee because there are no worrisome signs of inflation in the economy. Although modest early gains in tax-free and corporates evaporated and those issues ended unchanged, long-term governments closed up about 3/8 of a point on average. 30-year Treasuries a little better than that, up 13/32. The Lehman Brothers Long Bond Index was up 6.61 points, and Fed funds fell to 2 7/8%. Later, I'll show you where the action was on Wall Street today. Scott?
Paul, Paramount Communications today rejected QVC Network's request that the bidding for Paramount be open and in public. Paramount says public viewing of bids is inconsistent with obtaining the best value for Paramount shareholders. But Paramount has promised to act promptly once it receives new bids from QVC and Viacom. In trading today, Paramount gained 1/4, QVC rose 2 full points, but Viacom lost 5/8.
There's only one more week of shopping left before Christmas, and video games continue to be among this year's big sellers. But some games are coming under attack for being too violent. Lois Allen reports.
Mortal Kombat is one of the hottest-selling video games this year. The object of the graphic game is to kill and maim. The video department at J&R in New York says it can't keep the game on the shelf.
You can open a box and it can be gone before it ever saw the shelf. I mean, that's the #1 item on everyone's list.
The store also stocks Night Trap. In Night Trap, players try to block killers from using a neck drilling device to drain their victims' blood. The $60 game has been singled out by parents and legislators for its violent content. And it comes as concern over violence on TV and video is prompting calls for regulation of the video game industry. Sega, which makes Night Trap, has its own rating system and labels the game as inappropriate for children under 17. Nevertheless, the nation's largest toy store chain, Toys R Us, says it has stopped selling Night Trap. So has toy store FAO Schwartz. But Toys R Us says it will still sell Mortal Kombat. Despite the outcry over violent toys, many analysts don't expect it to have much long-lasting impact on the $6 billion a year video game industry.
Violence has always been an issue in this particular market. Video games get a lot more attention since the products can be rather violent, as we've seen by the recent action by Toys R Us. But children still love violence. They aspire to be like their action heroes, less action heroes. And that's created an ongoing, interest by toy makers to take advantage of that.
That's one reason Krutik expects violent toys to continue to be big sellers. She says there are 2 versions of the game Mortal Kombat, and the more violent one is outselling the other by nearly 2-to-1. Lois Allen, NBR, New York.
Still ahead on our program, tonight's market monitor, Elaine Garzarelli, partner and managing director of Lehman Brothers. Chairman of Boeing says he thinks the bottom has been reached in production cuts his company has been forced to make twice this year. Boeing is cutting production of both 737 and 747 aircraft because of weak demand. Still, Frank Schranz told a Seattle newspaper he sees another year of lower sales ahead and expects more layoffs. But he says they won't be as dramatic as this year's. And Paul, Boeing cut 16,000 workers from its payroll this year.
Boeing stock had a great week, and it was up again today. We'll see it on the active list shortly. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the week on a very strong note, up to almost 25.5 points, up about 11 points for the week overall. There we see it, closing just above the 37.51 level. And this is the best advanced decline ratio we've seen in many, many weeks. Better than 2 to 1. 78 new highs through the years against only 44 new lows, topping the active list for the second day running. Today on 12 million shares, merry-go-round down on another 3/4 points after tumbling 3 5/8 yesterday. The company did confirm that it missed some payments to suppliers, but it said it's still talking with its lenders. IBM, once again, the star, up 2 1/4 points. It had a good week. Payne Weber today increased earnings estimates for Big Blue. Merck, a half-point gainer. Walmart edged up 1/8 of a point. Philip Morris gained 3/8, was 5th in volume. Eastman Kodak up 1 full point, making a little recovery after recent weakness. American Telephone in there with a 3/8 point loss. Fruit of the Loom down another 5/8 of a point. Yesterday it tumbled 3 3/8 on the company's fourth quarter earnings estimates being below street estimates. And today Donaldson Lufkin downgraded Fruit of the Loom from very attractive to just neutral. Unisys in there with a 3/4 point gain. And there we see Boeing up 5/8 of a point. That stock is up over 4 for the week overall. Allied Signal a 2-point gainer today. The Wall Street Journal says Allied is in talks to buy Textron's turbine engine unit. Allied had no comment on that article. British Petroleum up another 2 1/8 after gaining 1 7/8 yesterday when the company said it's right on target for its profit objectives for 94. Coca-Cola down 1 point, hurt the Dow Industrial Average a bit. Dow Chemical fell 1 3/4. No specific news we saw there. Kyocera, the Japanese stock, up 2 points. Nikkei Index overnight was up 262 points or 1.4%. And finally, Olin Corp up 1 5/8 on news. The company has set a restructuring. It will take a $132 million charge in the fourth quarter, but Olin says 94 earnings will be better than most street estimates. Merrill Lynch upgraded the stock a notch. Amway Asia Pacific. That stock went public this past Wednesday at $18 a share. That same day it was up 10 5/8. Now look at it, up at 35.5 with another 4 5/8 point gain. Of course, helped along by the Hong Kong market where the Hang Seng Index just was up about 230 points or 2.2%. And that's another reason why China Tire Holdings was a strong stock, up 2 full points. Also, a 2-point gainer today. Wheat First Securities changed its accumulate to an upgrade, a near-term aggressive buy on ALSA. The Timberland companies down another 4 5/8 after tumbling 10 1/4 yesterday when Montgomery Securities cut earnings estimates. Today, the Wall Street Journal quoted a vice president saying that the company didn't see the tremendous demand for its boots and they didn't ship enough of them. Breed Technologies, which makes auto airbag sensors and systems, down 1 3/8 on news. It is going to file for a 3 3/4 million share offering of stock, earnings dilution there. And WMS Industries down 1 1/2. That could be linked to an SEC probe of the company's purchase of Viacom stock some time ago. NASDAQ trading a gain of 3.70, very respectable today, but for the week it was still down 1.51. Look at the volume, heavy, 310.6 million shares, 15 stocks up for every 14 down, 100 index up, nearly 5 3/4 points. Intel topped the active list, losing 3/4. Oracle down 3/8 of a point. MCI gained 1/2, and then LM Ericsson, a 1 1/4 point gainer. Nextel Communications, 5th in NASDAQ volume, down 3/8. Synoptics edged up 3/4, an 8-point gain for 3Com. DSC Communications up 2 1/8. Novell was a 1/4 point gainer. And 10th in NASDAQ dollar volume, Microsoft up 1/2 a point. First Pacific Network did well, up 3 3/8, big percentage gain. The company received part of a contract to supply cable television equipment to Moscow. Petrol Corp up 1 5/8 after Oppenheimer issued a buy recommendation, and THQ Incorporated lost half of its value today. It says it's going to have a fourth quarter loss. It's going to start a cost control program that will include pay cuts for top officers. Over the American Exchange, a gain of 2.76 in the market value index today, but for the week, it was down 2.08 points. Volume up about 2.5 million shares from yesterday. 328 issues closed higher, 285 lower. Energy Services on just over 1 million share topped the active list, down a 16th. Intelcom was up 2 1/4 points. The company said year-end earnings will be out in the middle of next week, and the company says it's experiencing double-digit revenue growth. And finally, Andrea Electronics down 2 points, probably some year-end profit taking there. That stock traded as low as 4 1/4 this year. That's the Wall Street wrap-up. Scott?
Paul, the Russian government today approved a draft privatization program for 1994 that will give more power to regional authorities. The document must be submitted to President Boris Yeltsin for approval. News reports say the plan would give extra power to the regions. Many of them have been opposed to privatization, but the concept is considered a key element in the transformation of Russia from a socialist system to a free market economy. As Reuters correspondent Lenia Chernik reports, privatization is already underway in Siberia.
The winds of reform have been particularly chilly for Siberian industry. More than 3/4 of the population here used to work for military factories, churning out an endless stream of tanks, warplanes, and space technology. But the end of the Cold War brought the days of bountiful employment, high wages and low food prices to an abrupt halt. Factory bosses here are warning Minister of Privatization Anatoly Chubais that their plans could come to a standstill in the next 2 months. They blame the government for rocketing inflation, high energy costs, and a huge tax burden. But Chubais is still optimistic about his privatization program and is calling for more foreign investment to speed up the process.
There are a lot of possibility for investing in Russian economy and the governmental position to support this kind of investment.
One of the most bizarre examples of Western investment in Siberia is this flower shop featuring roses and exotic orchids from Holland and Germany. Siberians are buying despite the inflated prices. But if Chubais is to succeed, he will have to do so with more basic industries. The giant Palyot Group was told to sharply reduce production of satellites and rocket carriers and start producing washing machines. They have not had much success, but they've managed to develop a new multi-purpose aircraft which can land on almost any surface, including ice. They're proud of their plane, but they hate their washing machine.
Chubais hopes that his privatization program will give a much-needed boost to the development of Russia's vast industrial hinterlands and will speed up the modernization process of the Siberian enterprises. Lena Chernyakov, Reuters, for NBR, Omsk, Siberia.
In business briefs, Wang Laboratories says it will begin issuing 30 million shares of common stock to satisfy the requirements of its reorganization plan. Most of the shares will go to Wang creditors. The computer software company expects the new stock to start trading on the NASDAQ next week. And A.G. Edwards' third quarter profits jumped 43% from a year ago to $41 million. Revenues rose 26% in the same period. A.G. Edwards gained 1/8 today to close at 29 3/4.
Coming up, commentator Alfred Kahn discusses telephone and cable mergers.
A House Democrat proposal to adopt a Canadian-style health system instead of the Clinton plan gained some support today. After crunching the numbers, the Congressional Budget Office found that while Canada's system might cost Americans more initially, it would save money in the long run. The CBO analysis found that if every American were covered by the Canadian plan, as much as $114 billion a year could be cut from the nation's medical bills.
The White House and the Pentagon are working out their differences over future military spending. President Clinton and his top advisors say a gap in the Pentagon's budget is not as large as first thought. There was talk of a shortfall as high as $50 billion over 5 years, but officials now say it's a more manageable $31 billion. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Warren Christopher today declined comment on reports he wants $3 billion added to the foreign aid budget.
The rate on 30-year fixed-rate mortgages inched higher this week. The Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation says the average rate climbed to 7.17% from 7.14% last week, but adjustable rate mortgages fell to 4.20% from 4.25%.
My guest market monitor this week is Elaine Garzarelli, partner and managing director of the Lehman Brothers brokerage. She's with us in New York at our studios there, and welcome back to the NBR. Elaine?
Nice to be here, Paul.
Elaine, we've had some tense moments in recent weeks about the NASDAQ market particularly, where there are a lot of people invested now, and the fact that it has been deteriorating. We had a nice little rally today. But do you think the worst is over? It was just one of those 4 to 7% corrections, or worse is yet to come?
We just went through a correction of 4 to 7%, about 4 to 5% in the major averages. The NASDAQ, from its peak to its trough, declined about 6.3%, and since then, actually, the NASDAQ has recovered about half of that decline.
So you are not looking for anything beyond that in the way of a major decline?
No, I think that we're in a rally phase that should last several weeks or months. And then I think if we have another correction, it would still be limited to no more than that, 4 to 7%.
What's holding the market up at these near record levels?
Well, it's interest rates, basically, Paul. I think that short rates with the 3-month bill rate at 304, before my indicators would give any sort of a sell signal of a correction greater than 4 to 7%, we need to see the bill rate go up about 75 points from here, 75 basis points from here, or 3/4%. And I think that would require not just one Federal Reserve tightening, but probably 2, maybe even 3.
And you don't see that any time in the near future?
I think it could happen sometime in 1994. I think it would probably be after the Humphrey Hawkins testimony, which is in the first quarter of the year. But with low inflation and the decline in oil prices, everybody is afraid of a Fed tightening, and the big surprise may be that they don't do anything.
The last time you were with us on June 18th of this year, you saw the Dow at fair value at 3,900. Have you changed your outlook there, upped it, downed it?
Well, based on this year's earnings, which have come in greater than the consensus expectations, and I expect that to be the case for the fourth quarter as well, I think that the fair value on this year's earnings is still 3,900 plus, and on 1994 earnings, actually the fair value is in the 4,000s.
So here we are at 37.51 on the close today. We've got a long way to go on the upside yet, as you see it. Yeah.
I think so. It's going slowly, but it's going to come one of these days.
What sectors do you like the best here?
The ones that are interest sensitive, consumer durables, machinery, equipment, technology, and the banks.
You gave us some good stocks last time. Clark Equipment in the low 30s. It's in the high 40s now. Dow Chemical is up about 3 or 4 points. Texas Instruments are down about 5 points, but Chemical Bank is up a little bit. You stay with those 4 stocks that you gave us?
Yes, definitely. I stay with each one of them. I also have some additional ones that you might want to know about.
Absolutely.
Okay. Regional banks, I think, is probably one of the best groups because it's corrected about 20%. Barnett Bank and Bank One and Chemical Bank, which you mentioned. Consumer durables, General Motors looks like it's a $100 stock to me. And Whirlpool, appliance sales, as you know, are booming. And in the capital goods area, I like semiconductors. I think it's a gift. That industry has corrected close to 20%. And there I like Texas Instruments and Intel.
Okay. Now, quickly, of your 14 indicators, the last time they stood around 58%, I think. Low 30s as a sell. Where do they stand now?
They're a little bit below 70%, which is still bullish. One of the most bullish indicators are the number of bullish advisors, which has dropped down on a 4-month moving average below 47%. We have never had a big correction or a bear market when the number of bullish advisors was that low. Bull markets usually are preceded by 80 to 90% of the advisors bullish.
All right, we like to hear it, Elaine, and we hope you're right. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
My guest market monitor, Elaine Garzarelli of Lehman Brothers.
Recent alliances between telephone and cable companies have created a vast and expanding new interactive telecommunications market. In tonight's commentary, Alfred Kahn, Professor Emeritus of Political Economy at Cornell University, says that consumers stand to benefit the most from recent media mergers.
I recently boasted about the role I played in helping persuade a federal court in Virginia to strike down prohibitions of telephone companies competing with cable companies in their own localities. As a result of that decision, companies like Bell Atlantic are preparing to offer dial-up video over their own copper wires, with a telephone dial taking the place of the channel selector on the TV set. I worried at the time that these two now potential competitors might frustrate the promise of that court decision by merging. Since then, there has indeed been a series of multi-billion-dollar alliances between Bell companies and the country's biggest cable operators. The partners have, however, apparently eliminated all possible anti-competitive elements of their unions, mainly by preparing to sell off all the cable properties in the regions in which the phone company partners themselves operate. The result, I'm persuaded, will be greatly intensified competition all across the country. Cable now passes by 96% of all households. Converted to two-way switch service, these networks represent the one potential ubiquitous challenge to the local telephone companies, which are still virtual monopolies for most customers. Outside of Bell Atlantic's or U.S. West's own franchise areas, therefore, these alliances will combine their telephone expertise with the cable partners' plant and expertise in programming to compete across the board with the telephone companies in those areas, primarily other Bell companies, offering a full, constantly expanding range of entertainment, information, and telephone services. Consumers can only benefit. I'm Alfred Kahn.
That's this edition of NBR for Friday, December 17th. I'm Scott Gervey in New York. Thanks for joining us. Have a good weekend, Paul.
And the same to you, Scott. I'm Paul Kangas in Miami, wishing all of you the best of goodbyes.
NBR is produced in association with Reuters, the world's largest electronic publisher, which provides NBR with news, market data, and communication services worldwide. And is made possible by A.G. Edwards, providing personalized financial services and investment advice to individuals and businesses. A.G. Edwards, a century-old tradition of service to investors. The Franklin Templeton Group is a global alliance of over 90 funds, including tax-free income funds and domestic and international growth funds. Digital, an information technology company putting imagination to work. And by the financial support of viewers like you.
Stay tuned for extended coverage of today's news on the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour, an up-to-the-minute, in-depth alternative to commercial news. Coming up next on 7.
The next generation will soon inherit $7 trillion. Whether you're planning to leave property or inherit it, you need NBR's latest video, How to Plan Your Estate or Inheritance. To order by credit card, call 1-800-535-5864.
Local broadcast of the Nightly Business Report on Channel 7 is brought to you in part by Kahn Honda Superstore, located near Regency Square, dedicated to providing quality automobiles and award-winning sales and service. Offering service Monday through Saturday and sales assistance 7 days a week. Kahn Honda Superstore, dedicated to performance, not promises.
Saxelby, dedicated to quality performance in architecture, space planning, and interior design throughout the Southeast. Saxelby.
First Union, for investment services, including mutual funds, asset management, trust services, and brokerage services. First Union.